What if I told you that 90% of the fish in this lake are within a stone's throw of where you are right now? And what if I told you that perfect, beautiful 100-foot cast you just made actually scared all of those fish away? It sounds crazy, I know. It goes against everything we feel when we stand at the water's edge. But today, we are going to tear down one of the biggest, most damaging myths in all of fishing. We are talking about the myth of the hero cast. I promise you, by the end of this video, you will look at a lake completely differently. You will understand why your buddy who barely casts 20 feet outfishes you every single time. So let me ask you this right now, and be honest in the comments below. Do you truly believe the biggest fish are always in the deepest water, way out in the middle? Let's get into it. For generations, the image of a fisherman has been tied to that long, arching cast. We see it on television shows, we see it in magazines. There's a certain romance to it, isn't there? The reel sings, the line unspools, and the lure lands with a satisfying plop 100 feet away. It feels productive. It feels like you're covering water, exploring the great unknown out in the middle. This belief is so ingrained in us that we do it without thinking. It's an automatic response. We arrive at the lake, we rig up, and we launch a cast as far as our rod and reel will allow. We do this because it's what we've always seen. It's what our fathers or grandfathers might have told us. You've got to get it out there where the big ones live. But this deeply held belief is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of how most freshwater ecosystems actually work. It's a habit that costs us countless fish, and today we're going to break that habit for good. First, let's talk about the psychology of the long cast. It's driven by a simple but flawed human idea. Bigger is better. A big lake must mean the fish are spread out everywhere, and the deepest, most mysterious part of that lake, the middle, must hold the biggest, most mysterious fish. This is the angler's ego at work. A long cast is a demonstration of skill. It's impressive to watch. It makes us feel like we are expert anglers capable of reaching any spot. But fishing isn't a casting competition. The fish don't give out awards for distance. They care about one thing, survival. And survival means staying close to food and cover. That long cast is often just an empty gesture. It's like shouting into an empty canyon. It might feel powerful, but nobody is there to hear it. We have to shift our mindset from how far can I cast to where should I cast. The answer to the second question is almost never as far as I can. Now let's get into the hard truth about the middle of the lake. For a fish, the vast open water in the center is often like a desert. Think about it from their perspective. There is no cover from predators above, like ospreys or eagles. There is often no structure on the bottom to hide in or around. The bottom is frequently just a uniform basin of silt or mud. It's a featureless, dangerous wasteland. Why would a fish choose to spend its time there? Bass, crappie, pike, walleye, they are all ambush predators to some degree. They need an edge. They need a place to hide and wait for a meal to swim by. The middle of the lake offers no such advantages. It's a food desert and a security nightmare. So while we stand on the shore, dreaming of the leviathan lurking in the depths, the reality is that most fish see that area as a place to be avoided at all costs. It's a place they travel through, not a place they live. So if fish aren't in the middle, where are they? It's simple. Fish relate to structure. This is the single most important rule in fishing. A fish needs a home. It needs a spot. That spot could be a submerged log, a rock pile, a weed line, a dock piling, or even just a subtle change in depth. Structure provides two critical things, safety and food. It gives them a place to hide from bigger predators and a place to ambush smaller prey. The middle of the lake typically has none of this. All the good stuff, all the fish real estate, is concentrated along the shorelines. The shoreline is where trees fall into the water. It's where rocks tumble down to create hiding spots. It's where weeds grow thickest because they can get sunlight. The shoreline is the dynamic, life-filled edge of the aquatic world. To cast over all of that in favor of the empty middle is like walking into a bustling restaurant and choosing to sit in an empty closet. You are ignoring all the action. Let's follow the food chain. This is a critical piece of the puzzle. What do predator fish like bass and pike eat? They eat smaller fish, crayfish, frogs, and insects. Now ask yourself, where do those creatures live? Minnows and bluegills school in the shallow weeds for protection. Crayfish hide under rocks near the bank. Frogs and insects are, by definition, tied to the shoreline. The entire food supply is concentrated in the shallows and along the first major drop-off. A big, smart predator fish isn't going to waste energy roaming a barren wasteland hoping for a meal. That's not an efficient way to live. Instead, it will position itself near the supermarket. It will find a comfortable hiding spot close to the bank, right next to the weed bed or the fallen tree, and it will wait for the food to come to it. By casting way out into the middle, you are casting away from the buffet and into the empty parking lot. You have to fish where the food is. This brings us to what I call the golden zone. The golden zone is the area from the water's edge out to about 20 or 30 feet. For bank anglers, this is the most important water in the entire lake, and it's the area that is most often ignored. People walk right up to the edge, make a few practice swings, and then launch their lure over this critical zone. They are literally scaring fish away with their footsteps, and then casting over the heads of any that remain. The golden zone contains all the elements we just talked about, the highest concentration of cover, structure, and food. Your first cast at any new spot should never be a long one. It should be a short, quiet pitch or flip parallel to the bank, exploring the water right at your feet. Then your next cast should be a little further out. Systematically cover the golden zone first, before you even think about making a long cast. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you're standing on the bank. The water in front of you looks plain, nothing special, so you fire a cast 100 feet out toward the middle. What you can't see is that just 10 feet from the shore, submerged in 5 feet of water, is a massive fallen tree. We call this a laydown. That laydown is a fish magnet. It's a condominium for bass. A 5-pounder is sitting there, tucked into the branches, completely hidden from view. He feels safe there. He's waiting for a small bluegill to swim by. When your lure sailed 100 feet over his head and landed with a loud splash, you accomplished nothing. But if your first cast had been a short, subtle one that dropped a plastic worm right next to that invisible log, your day would have been very different. The most productive fishing spots are very often the ones you cannot see. They are hidden beneath the surface, and they are usually much closer than you think. Here's another example of invisible structure. Many anglers think a good spot has to be something obvious, like a big pile of rocks or a visible weed bed. But some of the best spots are much more subtle. A tiny change in depth can be enough to hold fish. The bottom of the lake isn't perfectly flat. There are little ditches, small humps and drop-offs. A spot where the depth changes from 2 feet to 4 feet is a fish highway. Predators will use that small ledge as cover to ambush prey moving along the shallow flat. You can be standing on the bank and a ditch like that might only be 15 feet out. You would never know it's there just by looking. How do you find it? By fishing slowly and methodically from near to far. When you drag a jig or a worm along the bottom, you can feel these changes. You can feel the bottom go from soft mud to hard gravel. These are the secret spots that long-distance casters always miss. Now let's consider the negative impact of that long cast. It's not just a waste of time, it can actively ruin your spot. When you cast 100 feet, you have 100 feet of fishing line stretched across the water. That line is now cutting through the golden zone, right where the fish are likely holding. As you retrieve your lure, that line drags through the water, creating vibrations and a visible disturbance. If there's a slight crosswind, your line will have a big bow in it, sweeping across a huge area of the shallow water. To a wary bass sitting near the shore, this is a major red flag. It's unnatural. It's like a spider web suddenly being dragged through their living room. You may have just spooked every fish within 30 feet of the bank without even realizing it, and the final splashdown of a heavy lure way out there sends shockwaves back towards the shore. You've just announced your presence in the worst way possible. So what's the right way to approach a new spot? It's all about being systematic. Think of the water in front of you as a grid or a pie chart. Your job is to cover every slice of that pie, starting with the ones closest to you. Make your first cast short and to the left parallel to the bank. Work that lure back. Your next cast should be slightly further out, at a 10-degree angle, then another at 20 degrees and so on. This is called fan casting. You are methodically searching the water in a fan pattern from near to far. This approach ensures two things. First, you thoroughly cover the high percentage water in the golden zone. Second, you catch the most aggressive, closest fish first. This prevents you from spooking them by casting over them to reach more distant, less likely water. It takes discipline to fish this way. It's not as exciting as launching a lure into the sunset, but I guarantee you it is infinitely more effective. For those of you who fish from a boat with electronics, you have the ultimate proof right in front of you. Turn on your fish finder and just look. Where do you mark the most fish? It's almost always around specific pieces of structure. You'll see them stacked up on a drop-off, you'll see them suspended in a brush pile, you'll see them holding on a point. Now look at your screen when you're idling over a deep, featureless basin in the middle of the lake. What do you see? Usually nothing. It's a dead zone. Your electronics are telling you the story of the lake. They are screaming at you. The fish are here, next to this specific thing. They are not just randomly scattered across the bottom. Modern electronics, especially with side imaging, have confirmed what old-school anglers knew all along. 90% of the fish live in 10% of the water. Your job is to find that 10%, and it's rarely in the middle. Now, every rule has an exception. It would be wrong to say that you should never cast into the middle of the lake. There are specific situations where it makes sense. The most common one is when fish are schooling in open water. This sometimes happens with species like white bass, striped bass, or even largemouth bass when they are actively chasing large schools of baitfish like shad. You'll see them boiling on the surface, with birds diving down to join the feast. In this scenario, yes, you absolutely need to cast right into the middle of that frenzy. But this is an event. It's a specific, often short-lived behavior pattern. It is not the normal day-to-day state of the fish. For 95% of your time on the water, the fish will not be doing this. They will be holding tight to cover. So don't let the possibility of this rare event dictate your entire fishing strategy. It's the exception, not the rule. Another time you might target the middle of the lake is when you are trolling. Trolling is a completely different technique from casting. When you are trolling, you are often using downriggers or diving planers to get your lures down to a very specific depth. You might be targeting suspended fish that are relating to a thermocline or following migrating schools of baitfish in a massive body of water. This is a legitimate strategy, especially for species like salmon, trout, or walleye in the Great Lakes, for example, but it is not the same as standing on the bank and blindly casting into the abyss. Trolling is a systematic way to cover huge amounts of water to find these suspended nomadic fish. It's a specialized technique for a specialized situation. It does not mean that casting into that same open water from a stationary position is a good idea. It's comparing apples to oranges. How do you break the habit? How do you retrain your brain to stop launching those long bomb casts? I suggest you try what I call the 5-cast rule. It's simple. When you walk up to a new spot, you are not allowed to make a cast longer than 25 feet for your first 5 casts. That's it. Your first cast is parallel to the bank. Your second is a few feet further out. You methodically work the water right in front of you. This will do 2 things. First, it will force you to slow down and actually observe. You'll start noticing the little things you missed before, the small patch of weeds, the single rock sticking out of the water. Second, you will be shocked at how many fish you catch in what you previously considered dead water right at your feet. After you've made your 5 short casts then, and only then, are you allowed to start casting further. This simple drill will retrain your muscle memory and your fishing instincts. Let's imagine a case study. 2 anglers, Bob and Steve, are fishing the same stretch of shoreline. Bob is a traditional long caster. He walks up to the water and with a mighty heave sends his spinnerbait flying toward the middle of the lake. He reels it back quickly, covers a lot of water, and moves to the next spot. Steve, on the other hand, approaches the water slowly. His first cast is a quiet underhand pitch with a wacky rigged worm just 10 feet out, right into a small patch of reeds. He lets it sink slowly. Twitch, twitch, bam! A 4-pound bass inhales it. While Bob is still casting to empty water, Steve has already hooked the resident fish that was using the reeds for cover. Steve proceeds to work his way down the bank, making short, precise casts to every visible piece of cover. By the end of the day, Steve has caught 8 fish. Bob has caught 0. They fished the same water, but they had completely different strategies. Think about your approach. When you go fishing, you are a predator. How do successful predators in nature hunt? Do they run into the middle of an open field and start yelling? No, they are stealthy. They use the terrain to their advantage. A heron stands motionless in the shallows. A lion creeps slowly through the tall grass. You need to adopt the same mindset. When you get to the water's edge, don't just stomp right up to it. Stay back a few feet. Observe first. Look for any signs of life, a ripple, a nervous minnow. Then make your first few casts from that further back position. This prevents your shadow from falling over the water and spooking shallow fish. It keeps your movements hidden. Every step you take creates vibrations in the ground that can be detected by a fish's lateral line. Being quiet, slow, and stealthy, especially when fishing the golden zone, is just as important as your lure choice. Let the wind be your guide. The wind is one of the most powerful and most overlooked factors in fishing. Many anglers hate the wind, but a smart angler knows it's their best friend. When the wind blows into a shoreline, it creates a current. This current does a few amazing things. It pushes all the microscopic plankton toward that bank. The baitfish follow the plankton, and the predator fish follow the baitfish. The wind literally creates a moving buffet and delivers it to a specific spot. Furthermore, the wind churns up the water, breaking up the surface and making it harder for fish to see you. This is called walleye chop for a reason. It also oxygenates the water, making fish more active. So if you have a windy day, don't cast into the middle of the lake. Fish the wind-blown bank. The fish will be there. They will be shallow, and they will be actively feeding. It's nature's fish delivery service. We often get so focused on finding some secret, far-off spot that we ignore the obvious fish-holding cover right in front of our faces. I'm talking about boat docks, overhanging trees, culvert pipes, and reed beds. These are Grade A 5-star hotels for fish. They provide shade, cover, and ambush points. How many times have you walked out onto a dock and immediately cast as far as you can away from it? It's a classic mistake. The best fish are probably living directly underneath your feet, tucked up against the pilings. Before you cast out, take a minute to drop your jig or worm straight down beside every piling on that dock. Pitch your lure into the darkest shade pocket under that overhanging willow tree. These high percentage spots are often right there, but we are blinded by the allure of the distant water. Pay attention to your immediate surroundings. That's where the action is. Sometimes your gear itself can be working against you. Many anglers buy long, heavy rods designed for maximum casting distance. They spool up with thin, braided line to get even more distance. This setup is great if you're casting into a school of stripers from the beach, but it can be a major disadvantage for typical lake fishing. That long rod can be clumsy and inaccurate for making the short, precise pitches you need to target shoreline cover. You don't need to launch a lure 100 feet. You need to be able to gently drop a lure into a 1-foot square opening in the lily pads from 20 feet away. Often, a shorter, more accurate rod is a much better tool. You're not a golfer trying to drive the ball 300 yards. You're a surgeon making a precise incision. Choose the right tool for the job, and the job is usually close-quarters combat, not long-range bombing. Here's a final thought on this: the theory of educated fish. In heavily fished lakes, the fish get smart. They learn to recognize lures and associate them with danger. Now, where do most people cast? That's right, out toward the middle. The fish that live on the first major drop-off or on an obvious mid-lake hump have seen every crankbait and spinnerbait ever made. They are wary and difficult to catch. But what about that big base tucked under a gnarly root ball just 5 feet from the bank? That's a spot that 90% of anglers ignore. They walk right past it. They cast over it. It's possible that this near-shore fish is less pressured. It has seen fewer lures. It might be an easier fish to catch simply because it lives in a location that most people disregard. By focusing on these overlooked close-in spots, you are often presenting your lure to a less educated, more aggressive fish. You are playing a smarter game. So, when is it finally time to go long? After you have exhausted all the high-percentage water close to you, after you've fan-casted the golden zone, after you've picked apart every piece of visible and invisible cover nearby, then and only then does it make sense to start probing the deeper water. A long cast is a tool, not a default setting. It's useful for reaching a specific target, like a distant rock pile or a channel edge that you can't get closer to. It's for when you know there is a specific piece of structure out there that you want to hit. It is not for blindly casting into empty, featureless water just for the sake of distance. The long cast should be a deliberate, strategic choice based on a specific reason, not a thoughtless habit. If you can't answer the question, why am I casting there, then you probably shouldn't be casting there. Remember, fish close first, then go long if you must. So, let's wrap this all up. The big takeaway, the one thing I want you to remember is this: stop defaulting to that long bomb cast. The fish are not just out there. In most cases, they are right here, closer than you could ever imagine. The most game-changing realization for any angler is discovering that you probably walked past a dozen catchable fish just to get to your spot. They were at your feet the whole time, hiding in cover you never even noticed. This idea completely changes your approach. It forces you to slow down. It makes you more observant, more deliberate. You stop being someone who just flings lures around, and you become a hunter, methodically dissecting the water piece by piece. You will catch more fish and bigger fish, I absolutely guarantee it. Thank you so much for watching. If this video changed the way you think about casting, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more content that breaks down the myths and gets to the truth. Now for the comments. I want to hear your stories. What's the closest you've ever caught a trophy fish to the bank? Let us all know below.